and welcome back to the Dice Tower. I'm Camilla Cleghorn.
I'm Zee Garcia.
Today, we're going to be taking a look at the Lord of the Rings adventure book game. And this game is going to be a cooperative game where you're working together, playing through the movies as all the characters trying to get the ring to Mordor. Right?
Chuck it in there.
Chuck it in there. So yeah, you're going to work together. It's coming to you from Ravensburger. And let's see how it plays.
Here's what the game looks like, mostly set up and ready to begin. To finalize that setup, we are going to flip open the book to chapter 1 here. The first adventure. The adventure begins, and we are going to follow the setup instructions there so we can play this one. The way the game works is you are going to be playing through multiples of these mini games, completing these challenges here, following these rules until you either lose the chapter, in which case you can set up that chapter and try again, or you complete it. All of these challenges, the last one normally saying something like, you complete this chapter, and then you can move on to the next one. The next one is going to have its own board, its own setup, and its own set of challenges. And I'm not going to show you any more than these two. I want to reserve that surprise for you. There's also quite a few tokens here that you're going to be using for these different challenges. So going back to the first one, we'll go ahead and set up. So it says to find the chapter 1 plot chart, put it near the book. So there's a stack here of plot charts. We would reveal the first one, and this lets us know various events that are going to happen throughout this mini game. It also lets us know that we're going to shuffle up the deck of cards and everybody gets 4. These come in a variety of types, with the special type to be very much aware of, these rings here, which behave as a wild symbol whenever you use them towards various requirements, but every time you use or discard one of these, you must move this corruption track up here. And as you do so, every time you hit one of these spaces, you have to draw one of these corruption cards. Very bad things are going to be happening. So that's what this is all about, and again, everyone gets 4 of these. It says to put out Frodo, Samwise, Merry, and Pippin and Aragorn there in their corresponding places, and you'll see their names printed on the board. So we'll go ahead and do that. We are putting out Merry there. We've got Sam. We've got Frodo, Pippin. There's Gandalf right there, Gandalf the Grey. And then we've also got Aragorn, who begins over here off the board. There's a few other places. It also says to put out these two, the Black Riders on their corresponding spots. So one right here, one right here. And that's it. So the player who last took a trip goes first. There's a few chapter clarifications here, and we are good to go. So everybody has a reference card over here, and you are going to be following 5 steps until either you all win or you all lose. So let's say I have this hand of cards here, and I am going to begin. The very first step is I may move a single character up to 2 spaces, or 2 characters 1 space each, or not at all, or a single character 1 space, okay? So that's the very first thing I need to do. And of course, you're going to want to read these challenges so you know what it is you're going for. So for example, this top one here says, keep it secret, keep it safe. Frodo and Gandalf must be on the hearth. Samwise must be on the road to the Shire. Road to the Shire over here. So I need to get Sam in there, and Frodo and Gandalf in here. These characters can share spaces unless the scenario dictates otherwise. So on my turn, I might do something like this. Take Sam and move him 1, 2 in here into that space where he needs to go. That's step 1. Step 2, called the storytelling phase, I can do in whatever order I want to, and I can do several of these things. So I could discard cards from my hand to move characters 1 to 1. So I could, for example, discard this card and move Frodo in there. I could do that with even one of these rings. But again, every time you use one of these for any reason or discard it, you move up on the corruption track. So I could do that. I could complete a challenge. Challenge is over here. As long as I qualify the top, I would discard these cards from my hand, and I complete the challenge, earning me a reward. And I will mark that I have completed that challenge. These do not necessarily need to be done in order unless they specify they do, but ideally, there's usually sort of a logical progression here, okay? So for example, this one at the bottom says all of the challenges complete. This one requires that these two have happened already, but I could do these two in either order. Other things I can do on my turn, I can play special cards. The special cards are out of the game at the beginning. They're in this deck. And some of the rewards are going to let you draw from the special deck. These have unique and new abilities, and they get added to your hand, and they stay in the deck of cards from scenario to scenario. So once I'm done with chapter 1 here, if I've earned any of these, they'll be shuffled into the normal deck and will come up during chapter 2. If you do lose a chapter and you need to try that chapter again, you will not keep any special cards you unlocked for that chapter, but you do not reset the corruption. So that's going to stay wherever it is. Any new cards you earned during that specific chapter play, you have to shuffle back in here. The final thing you could do during the storytelling phase is you could trade one card with another player. So I could give them one of these and take one of their cards. This is going to help you make these sets that are necessary for completing challenges and for various other things you're doing later on in the game. So for example, on my turn, I went ahead and I moved. I'm going to discard this card here to move Frodo in there, and I would stop doing anything else. No special cards. I don't want to trade with anybody. I am done. We go to the next step, which is drawing 2 cards from the story deck. So here I've got the story deck. I'm going to draw 1 card, 2 cards, and I add those to my hand. I do have a hand limit of 6, so I'm still good there. Next up comes the plot step, in which I draw the top card of this deck, and we check the number against that chart there. So number 10 came up, and we see that 9 through 12 says move either Black Rider 2 spaces. And they move on these dark roads, so they're going to go 1, 2, for example. Again, all these rules about where they move, the fact that they can't run into each other, the fact that if they run into a hobbit, that hobbit has to go to the hiding spot. That's all right here in the chapter rules. I didn't go over it, but it's right there, okay? And then the last thing is, well, like I said, I have to discard down to 6. That's actually the last step. So move, storytelling, where I take actions, drawing 2 cards, playing a plot, and then discarding down to 6. And we'll lose if normally, this one happens to say here, if there's more than 1 hobbit in the hiding spot, or if the plot deck runs out. And that's pretty much always true. If that plot deck runs out and I need to draw another one, we've lost that chapter. So during the next player's turn, they'll have their own hand of 4 cards here. Let's say that it's these 4 that they've got. They get to move a character 2 spaces. They'll likely move Gandalf here, 1, 2. That's the free move. Then they go to the storytelling, where they'll likely trade a card with my previous hand, get that, and give this, so that they can complete this, discarding that card, and completing that first challenge. The reward says each player draws 1 card from the story deck, remove Gandalf from the board. So we'll go ahead and pull him off the board, and everybody gets 1 free card per player. Now we would start worrying about the next one here, where it says all 4 hobbits have to be in the orange spaces in Bree, and as a reward we draw a card from the special deck, and we put Aragorn out at the Prancing Pony. And then there will be one last one. Again, once we've done all this, we will finish, flip over to the next chapter, and set that up, having shuffled all the decks and readying everything. The only things that don't reset, again, are special cards you've earned that stay in the deck, and the corruption track is not going to reset pretty much ever. So there you go. One final thing I want to point out. Every one of these chapters is going to have a special ability down here that you can put the One Ring on and utilize. It's going to move up the corruption, just like you would whenever you use the One Ring card, but it lets you manipulate the board and give yourself a little more breathing room so that you can accomplish your tasks. In this case, it happens to say One Ring ability, move a Black Rider 1 space. So if they're not in an opportune place, I can have them move over 1. They'll always move clockwise, and then I can have one of the hobbits slip by or something like that. So there you go. That's everything that is going on in the game. Obviously, I'm not going to show you all the special cards. I'm not going to give you a peek at any of these bad things that might happen as we advance to the special locations. But it should give you an idea of how the game operates. Let's go ahead and go back up top.
All right, so as far as the theme goes, I just want to jump right into the theme because, you know,
Sure.
that's my wheelhouse,
a big part
right?
of it
It
also.
is, right. And it's Lord of the Rings is probably one of the geekier things, I guess, that are the ones that I nerd out a little bit more on,
Okay.
you know, and like the Star Wars, the Marvel, Lord of the Rings is more my wheelhouse. So I was really excited about this game, and I love cooperation as well. And I will say right off the bat, that's one thing that I was impressed with. You know, as you're going through, they do have the movie license, so you are seeing the artwork from it, and you really do feel like you're playing through it in each individual scenarios. So there's going to be, as you saw there in the overview, 8 different that you have to play through, or at least, I guess, 8 games. If you fail, you have to redo one. And they are each unique and individual, but still fit very in line with the movies.
Yeah, they've come up with 8 sort of mini games to approximate a scene from the movie or a sequence or a what have you. So they feel very puzzly, and most of the scenarios are incredibly puzzly. But they do a good job of approximating, if nothing else, the story beats in the movies.
Right. I agree. And that is one thing, like I said, I think to me is positive, is that each of these feel unique. But unfortunately, it kind of leans more towards a negative because I feel like you're really having to learn rules every time you go from one scenario to the next. So it's one of those things that initially I'm like, oh, this is positive and I like, but quickly I found that it kind of became a negative deterrent having to recheck some of those rules for the specific scenario that you're on.
I guess for me, where the negative comes in is the fact that in this game, you're not playing through all 8 scenarios every time you play. You can die. Like, you can time out. You can corrupt out. That means if you play this game 30 times, you will play scenario 1 30 times, and you might play scenario 8 3.
Right. And there's really no way to just play one. Like, ooh, 5 is my favorite. I want to jump into
Right. That's not a thing in the rules. And to me, while I understand that playing through the movies chronologically, what happened in the stories that you know is the main hook, I want to be able to relive a greatest moment. People do this all the time. I can't tell you how many times I've seen like that one scene in the movie where the wargs attack. I just go right to that scene. And you can't do that in this game. And that blows my mind how they didn't come up with a system to go, this is normally how you play, 1 through 8. But if you want to play Chapter 4 because you really enjoyed that mini game / puzzle, here are rules to play just that one. Have a quick burst of 20 minutes of fun. As opposed to like 2 hours.
Right. I was like, or opposite of that, I don't really like this scenario because I find it way too random. And because I do feel like some of these are very chance-based or luck-based, your wins.
Sure,
You know, I mean, obviously you're dealing cards and that kind of stuff. So you're going to have that random nature to it, but especially in some of these where it's just so tight that, and the timeline is so short. You have, 15 turns, I think, to get it done
Basically, yeah.
And that's just too tight of the economy in order to get it done, unless you luck into it, I found. And so because of that, you can't choose your scenario. But then let's say you're fine, I don't mind playing it all the way through. You play it all the way through. You alluded to this. I mean, you're looking at like 2 to 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Until you run out of time on the Eye of Sauron here. And so it's just that time, there's kind of a disconnect with that as well. As I thought I was sitting down to a 30, 45-minute game. 2.5 hours later, I was like, oh, and more rules. This is the 6th time I've learned rules.
It's also very deceptive, unfortunately, on the box. Because if you look at the back of the box, they're like 20 minutes per chapter.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as playing a single chapter. Like, that's not ever possible.
Right.
So don't tell me 20 minutes per chapter when playing a chapter is not a possibility.
Right.
You know what I mean? Even products that I get at the store don't lie to me like that with calories.
Right.
Like if something says 200 calories per serving, there's 5 servings. I can eat 1 serving.
Yeah.
Like, that's possible.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I can't play 1 chapter.
Right.
Like there are no rules for that.
But I feel like they also can't be truthful in a box and be like, at least 2 hours.
Yeah.
Because people would be like, nah.
I get it, but again, it seems deceptive to me, and I wish there were rules to modify that. Having said that, I personally thought that the rising tension from the One Ring cards was good, and that the puzzles they came up with, that I'm sure they had like dozens and dozens of variants of these things and boiled it down to, I'm guessing, their favorite 8. I think they are good.
Yes.
I think they're well put together. Some are a little trickier to sort of wrap your head around than others, but they're well put together. They are interesting, again, mini games. I don't know how else to describe them. They came down to 8 solid ones.
Right.
And they get kudos for that. I just wish there was a better delivery system of those 8 puzzles.
Right, I wish it was more... This is one of the few times I would say this where I wish that this was a campaign game. That you could go in and put a little bit more into this first puzzle, play it, and maybe it becomes a 30-minute game, but then you can pack it away and pull it back out later, or just play your favorite, something like that. It's like I wish it was truly not a single session playthrough, but a campaign game that you can jump into and level up and set aside a little bit easier to come back to later.
Sure.
And that's not often something that I want. I'm like, I'm tired of campaigns, I think that this one for me, because I did have so much fun in the variability of them. And each of them, there are some I liked more than others, and that's just going to happen. But I wanted to keep playing it, and that's kind of where I keep coming back to, is like, I want to do it again, but I want to start at number 5 where I died last time, or I want to just go back in, and you said relive that moment, or play it at a different player count. But starting at the beginning is just so cumbersome.
I agree. I agree. And I should mention before we move on here that yes, you can. There are rules in there that say, you want to stop, put it away, bring it back out. That's not really the same thing. I can do that with any game, okay? That's not what Milla's talking about here. Speaking of, you kind of touched on scalability, the number of players, and we should probably talk about that.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of the last point I wanted to make here is with that scalability, it has a variant for solo play, and that solo play you play with kind of it's not a dummy hand, but a second set of cards that you can draw out with, so you have that trade option, all right? But there's no variability or no mode or anything like that for 2 players or 3 players. So a 2-player and a 4-player game are the exact same.
Yep.
The only difference is you have a lot of other cards available out on the table, so that trade action works, I guess, for lack of a better word. I found in a 2-player game, it really didn't. Like I said, the economy in this and getting the right symbols at the right place and having enough in order to discard, to move the characters around, was just too tight for, I think, in a 2-player game. It was incredibly difficult. So it's a very different experience at 2 and at 4. And I think that kind of did a disservice to the game. And the 2 is just not as fun. You know what I mean?
Well,
it needs more.
You can't trade for the card you need if the card isn't in anyone's hand.
Right.
And that happens plenty.
Right.
Yeah, they could run into that all the time. And then the rings, are supposed to be like sort of the valve for that lets you do whatever you want to because it's wild. Well, good luck with that. You're gonna you run up this track if you use too many of those rings. You're gonna make it to like chapter 4.
Right, and that's exactly what happened. In 2-player games, they all lost because of this track. As opposed to running out of time, or we didn't quite puzzle it right. So the puzzle, it becomes less of a puzzle and more of just punishing. I guess I'm playing a card again. I have all rings in my hand. I guess I'll play a ring. It's just too punishing, I feel like. So I don't feel like it scales very well. I really think that this is a 3 or 4-player game.
Right.
So anything else before final thoughts?
I think that's it. Let's talk about some final thoughts.
All right.
For me, it's a tricky one to rate because, again, I think it's attempting to go for this sort of mass market vibe and feel, really appeal to people that love the movies. And I think a lot of the people who fall into that camp, you play Monopoly and mass market games and you're used to that and you love the Lord of the Rings movies. I think the time and the cadence of this game might not bother you as much.
Right.
Having a game that is 2.5 hours long, having a game that every time you flip over a page, it's such a cool idea. This idea of you're playing in a book. It's a really cool looking thing, But for me, I've had some big issues with it. And it's not even that they didn't come up with neat stuff. They did. I think they stopped short.
Yes,
they could have done other things that sold this not just to those people who I think are going to like it, but to lots more audiences.
Right.
Having said that, I do appreciate what is here. I'm going to come in at a 6. I feel like it kind of squeaks into a 6 for me, though.
Okay.
So because I've enjoyed there's a good back and forth. This is fun. I'm not sure I'm going to keep coming back because I got to play that stinking first adventure again. Like, I got it. I've played that a lot now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wish there was a way around that, but I've enjoyed what I've done with it, so a 6 for me.
Okay, so I'm coming in a little higher. I'm going to come in at a 7 on this one, and I think what kind of sways me higher into that approval of it is I do keep wanting to play, but I think I am more of that camp that you were talking about, that I really like this theme. I really like the connections to the movie. I like that I open the book and I don't know what's coming. Oh, I know where the movie goes next, but how did they do that? How did they implement it? Oh my gosh, it's the Balrog. How do you think they did that? Just having that excitement and that reliving of it really kind of sold this game to me. And I enjoyed that. I think as far as coming back to it, I agree with you that I don't want to play the first scenario anymore unless I'm teaching it to somebody else.
Sure.
And this is one that I would be, even though I've played the first scenario multiple times now, I'm still excited to be like, oh, you like Lord of the... Oh, hold on. Let me teach you something. And I think that, to me, is what kind of takes into that approval, is even though I personally don't want to play number 1 again, I want to go to 8 because I haven't played that very many times. I want to do that. But I would be just as excited to play the first one and introduce somebody to it.
Right.
So while I did add a higher player count. So for me, it's a 7. It's an approval. I'd happily teach it to somebody new, and I'd look forward to that experience. But I do agree, for it to keep hitting my table with my play group, I would want a little bit more out of the game.
Yeah.
So it's a 7. All right, and that's going to do it for us with the Lord of the Rings adventure card game. Thanks for stopping by. I'm Camilla Cleghorn.
I'm Zee Garcia.
Go deliver the ring.